In an abandoned building, Suzuha approaches Mayuri and tells her that her father and others are looking for her, as they are about to kick off the operation. Thereafter, Mayuri expresses her regret for not holding Hikoboshi's hand, wondering if the future would have been different. Later, Okabe is going through his hypnotherapy session. After being done, he walks out of the center and is approached by Mayuri. They then continue to take a stroll where Okabe suggests that they go grab a bite. Since Ferris and Ruka have already invited Mayuri over to Akiba, she suggests to Okabe that they go there, to which he agrees. Over at Akiba, Mayuri gets a message from Yuki, discovering that she wants to talk about something with them at the lab. Back at Suzuha's house, she and her dad, Daru, engage in a back and forth over Daru's trolling on the internet. Soon, the bell rings, and Suzuha immediately goes into hiding, realizing that it's Yuki, and she does not want to show herself to her. Yuki then steps inside, followed by Mayuri and others arriving as well. Thereafter, Okabe decides to head to the bathroom but gets stopped by Daru, who tries not to give Suzuha's hidden location away. However, Okabe decides to go inside anyway. As expected, he gets jumped over by Suzuha, who then holds him with a headlock. Just then, everyone finds out that Suzuha is there as well. Later at the rooftop, Suzuha explains to Okabe how she does not think that Yuki will be happy to know that she is her future daughter. But Okabe thinks otherwise, believing that Yuki might feel something. Thereafter, Suzuha explains to Okabe how she and her family were labeled as rebels. Furthermore, she reveals that they were not able to escape as her mother got obliterated by a machine gun while trying to defend Suzuha. She then tries to convince Okabe to fix the past, but Okabe refuses, mentioning that it's quite dangerous. In response, Suzuha leaves angrily, telling Okabe that she hasn't given up yet. Later on the bus, Okabe receives a notification from his colleagues inviting him to drinks. Okabe decides to accept the invitation, and Mayuri assures him that she will be fine on her own. After the drinks, Okabe leaves to head home. Along the way, he begins having hallucinations from his past, where a girl repeatedly tells him that she doesn't want to die. With her death imminent, Okabe is unable to do anything. Thereafter, he sees the many dead bodies of the same girl, prompting him to quickly snap back to reality. The following day, Okabe heads to the conference hall. There, he decides to work at the front desk. Shortly after, a tiny woman calls out for him, but he has no idea where the voice is coming from. After looking down, Okabe sees the woman. He quickly believes that the girl is underage and reminds her that this is a college seminar. The girl then pulls out her identity card to show that she is 21 years old and a grown woman, named Maho Hiajo. After directing her to the staff room, Okabe spots Mocha from his visions and starts to panic. But he quickly calms down, recalling that this is a beta world line. The conference soon starts, with Maho acting as an interpreter for the American professor who is presenting. He explains that their current project is based on research that Kurisu did while she was alive. The same research that allowed her to create a time machine that projected a user's consciousness into the past is now being used to create an AI called Amadeus, based on a human's memories. To demonstrate Amadeus, Maho tries to load the system, but it is taking some time. This causes researchers from the crowd to begin speaking up, telling Maho that it is near impossible to achieve what she has just said. Hearing this, Okabe is unable to control himself as he stands up and lashes out at the researcher, telling him that they cannot rule out something that they haven't even tried yet. The American professor, Alexis Leskinen, then claps for Okabe's bravery but advises him to stay calm until the project is completed. Maho then presents Amadeus, who runs an AI version of herself that was implanted with her memories 4 days ago, demonstrating that it is capable of its own decisions and behaves just like a human. Following the seminar, Okabe speaks with Maho about the project. During their conversation, Maho discovers that Okabe was once an acquaintance of Kurisu, another researcher in the Amadeus project. They then take their conversation at a table. There, Maho suddenly begins to cry as she reminisces about her past memories with Kurisu. Thereafter, Leskinen approaches the two, asking Maho if they are having a love quarrel. However, Maho explains that she is crying on her own as they are discussing Kurisu. This prompts Leskinen to realize that Okabe is an acquaintance of Kurisu. Hearing about this, Leskinen and Maho invite Okabe to converse with an Amadeus AI formed from Kurisu's memories of 8 months ago prior to her death. Coming to the lab, Okabe is greeted by Maho, who then takes him inside. She even tells Okabe that Amadeus will make sure to replicate Kurisu's memories, along with her behavior, causing a person to easily succumb to delusion. She even explains to Okabe that the Kurisu he will see won't be a real person. Even after all these, Okabe still agrees to meet with Amadeus. Shortly after, they make their way into the room where Maho and Okabe engage in a conversation. Suddenly, Amadeus appears on the computer screen, asking Okabe what's so funny. Seeing her, memories flash before Okabe's eyes as he recalls about Kurisu. Their conversation continues with Amadeus's version of Kurisu teasing Maho with some secret joke. However, Maho abruptly backs off from the conversation, telling Kurisu that there's no such thing. Confused, Okabe has no idea what these girls are talking about. Suddenly, Leskinen arrives inside the room as well. Engaging in a conversation with him, Okabe accidentally mispronounces, prompting Kurisu to joke about it. In response, Okabe abruptly turns around, calling Kurisu Christina. When the three begin to push Okabe, he tries to find a way out of it. Later, Leskinen asks for a favor from Okabe. He asks him to converse with Amadeus from time to time, so they can use it as data. He even offers Okabe to talk with Amadeus whenever he wants, adding that he only has to talk with her twice a month and report back to Leskinen. Also, Leskinen asks Okabe to just deny the offer if that's how he feels, but Okabe accepts the offer. After a while, Okabe meets with Mayuri. There, she reveals that they are planning to throw a huge Christmas party for Suzuha to help cheer her mood. But Okabe warns her that Suzuha won't like it. They then continue to take a stroll. In the middle of it, Okabe receives a phone call from Amadeus. After picking it up, Kurisu scolds Okabe for ignoring her. Moreover, she assures him that he can call her anytime but explains that she might be busy sometimes. Ending the phone call, Okabe is unable to hold back his tears after recalling the moody behavior of Kurisu when she was alive. Mayuri takes all the girls in on her plan to throw a Christmas party for Suzuha. She even explains how she is going to make Santa suits. Yuki then comments how Okabe would love to see Mayuri in a suit like that, prompting her to question why. Yuki then explains to everyone that Mayuri is Okabe's girlfriend, but Mayuri clarifies all the misunderstandings, revealing that she and Okabe are just childhood friends. She further clarifies that Okabe already has someone that he likes. Later, Okabe is engaged in a phone call with Kurisu, where she scolds him for being evasive, wanting to see the lab, and even reminding him that her old self also went there once. Okabe then receives a phone call from Mayuri in the middle of his conversation, prompting him to hang up on Kurisu. Mayuri then asks Okabe to help her carry the shopping bags as they are too heavy, leading Okabe to ask her to meet at the lab. After that, Okabe gives Kurisu a tour of the city. Upon reaching the radio building, Okabe instantly turns around, prompting Kurisu to grow even more curious. He then makes his way to his lab and begins showing Kurisu around. Suddenly, Mayuri arrives, causing Okabe to abruptly end the phone call. Thereafter, Mayuri reveals to Okabe that everyone has agreed to come to the party. Over at the time machine, Suzuha thanks Faris for renting the place. Suzuha then realizes that she has to take Okabe in their mission if they really want to make it to the SteinsGate. Coming back to the facility, Leskinen tells Maho that they are going to hold a meeting on Christmas Eve, where Okabe will report to them about Amadeus. There, Maho shows concern regarding Okabe. Later, Okabe continues to give Kurisu a tour of the city. There, she pushes Okabe to tell her why he called Christina, adding that she is going to continue asking him until she gets the answer. Suddenly, Leskinen and Maho spot Okabe and invite him over to a bite. During this, Okabe explains how his progress has been going so far with Amadeus. Silently, Kurisu asks Maho to make a move on Okabe, but Okabe reveals that he has to attend a Christmas party, causing Leskinen to grow excited. Okabe then brings Leskinen and Maho over to his lab for the party. There, he also discovers that Daru is trying to convince Suzuha to attend the party as well. After a while, Daru manages to trick Suzuha into coming to the lab. Just then, the group tries to surprise Suzuha while she jumps on Yuki, not knowing what's going on. Yuki then explains to her that she was just trying to surprise her. Suzuha then calms herself down and tells the group to enjoy themselves, stating that she is not going to stay. However, Okabe steps in, convincing Suzuha to stay and enjoy the party. The party is now going in full flow, but Okabe seems distracted. Mayuri even notices that but decides to ignore it. She then tells Okabe that the gift distribution is about to begin. In response, Okabe tells her that he is going to be back soon. He then makes his way to the rooftop, where he engages in a conversation with Kurisu over a phone call. There, Okabe explains to Kurisu that he called her Christina to tease her. Meanwhile, Mayuri grows worried and decides to check up on Okabe, followed by Maho. Overhearing the phone call, Maho decides to take action, grabbing the phone from Okabe's grasp and ending the call. She then gives him a hard reality check, telling Okabe that Kurisu is dead. Before the Christmas party chaos began, Rintarou had a chilling nightmare set in the 1.382733 beta world line, where the Soviet Union had invaded Japan in 2010. Surrounded by lifeless bodies and the terrifying sight of armed soldiers closing in, he gasps for air. The enemy patrol spots him, urging him to run, but it's too late. His guards are shot and Rintarou collapses. When he wakes up, he's in a strange office, face to face with a man. As a phone rings, his hesitation is met with the man's approval. He picks up the call, and that's when his reading Steiner jolts him back to reality. Back on the roof of his lab, shaken and still racing from the nightmare, Rintarou rushes downstairs to find Mayuri, haunted by memories of her deaths in the Alpha Attractor field. His heart calms when he finds her safe. Later, during a meeting with Alexis Leskinen and Maho, Rintarou opens a Christmas gift, finding a dress inside, which Kurisu teases him about. He wonders why she wasn't mad at him for hanging up earlier, and she casually mentions he called her back immediately, though Rintarou has no memory of it. When Leskinen arrives, apologizing for the late hour, they discuss his gift to Rintarou. Rintarou hesitates before revealing it, but Kurisu insists there's no need to hide. Leskinen shares his hopes for Kurisu's feelings to develop, but Rintarou dismisses it. After all, Kurisu's just an AI. Leskinen explains Amadeus, a system that models human brains from memories and could eventually experience emotions like love. On the train, Maho presses Rintarou about his past with Kurisu, wondering if they were lovers. Rintarou denies it, the memory of failing to save her still raw. Maho apologizes, realizing she might have hit a nerve. Meanwhile, a red laptop and hard drive on her desk hint at something deeper. After cleaning, Ferris suggests tea at May Queen Nian Squared, but Mayuri hesitates. Luca can't join, as his father's guests are visiting. Mayuri teases him, and the group wonders where Daru is. He's with Suzuha in the lab, talking about something important. Suzuha slips on the cozy sheep fur gloves she got for Christmas, and surprises Daru by suggesting he invite Yuki to the shows he bought. Daru asks why she's been avoiding the lab and radio buildings, and Suzuha hesitates before revealing she's searching for a girl she was separated from in 1998, someone who came with her from 2036. Later, at May Queen, Daru fills Rintarou in on the girl Suzuha's looking for. Rintarou figures she'd be 22 by now and mentions how Suzuha had almost given up, but found a photo online, suspecting it could be her. Daru reveals her name, Shiina Kagari. Shocked, Rintarou asks who the father is. Daru reassures him that Kagari is a war orphan adopted by Mayuri in the future. He also mentions that peacekeepers from 2036 are after them because of Rintarou's time machine project. Flashes of the future show Daru urging Suzuha to hurry as the peacekeepers approach. Mayuri insists Suzuha take Kagari and protect her. Kagari, unwilling to part with her mother, struggles, but Mayuri insists for her safety. Suzuha and Kagari travel through time to 1975, then 1998, and finally to 2010. Rintarou, after some thought, agrees to help find Kagari. He wonders about his reading Steiner activation and whether the world line shifted. A news report mentions Japan's upcoming cabinet meeting with Russia due to Dr. Nakabachi's defection last summer. At Tokyo Denki University, Rintarou asks Amadeus, Kurisu, for ideas on locating a missing person from 12 years ago. She suggests contacting the police or hiring a detective, but Rintarou remembers Maho's comment about Kurisu being dead and hangs up. In 1998 Akihabara, Suzuha explains to Kagari how the Y2K crisis was caused by the IBM 5100. and they must prevent it to safeguard the future. Kagari questions whether changing the past is okay, fearing it could alter their future. Suzuha assures her it's necessary for reaching SteinsGate. Kagari suddenly points a gun at Suzuha, warning her that a shadow told her not to change the future. Suzuha acts fast, trying to stop her. In the lab, Suzuha asks Daru about the progress of his search. He tells her he's checked the police records for missing people, but found nothing. She asks if he's spoken to Rintarou about it. Daru confirms Rintarou agreed to help and will do what he can. Suzuha thanks him for his help in finding Kagari. After consulting Amadeus, Rintarou heads to the library to dig through old newspapers. Kurisu calls him again, and he rushes out to answer. She teases him for ignoring her again, and he reassures her he was just in the library. She offers to help him search for the missing person using the Amadeus server, which connects directly to Victor Chandria University's research building. Though hesitant, Rintarou agrees to think about it. Ferris and Luca spot Rintarou on the bridge. Rintarou rarely sees them together. Ferris explains Luca's father asked them to pick up a few things for some guests staying over. They offer to carry the items, but Luca declines. Rintarou asks for their help in finding the girl. Later, Ferris tells Rintarou she found no leads from Kuroki, but she did hear about a ghost in braids seen around the radio building asking about a little girl. Just then, Rintarou spots Leskinen in the hallway and follows him, but he disappears. Back in the lab, Suzuha says she doesn't want to burden Daru or Rintarou anymore. Daru insists that if they're looking for someone, they might as well bring in a specialist. Suzuha is reluctant, thinking it's better if fewer people know, but Daru has already contacted someone nearby. Rintarou gets a call from Luca, wanting to meet for advice, but Rintarou tells him he's busy and has to call him back. Daru's contact arrives, a woman with long red hair, dressed just like the one in the photo Rintarou and Daru had seen. When Rintarou opens the door, he's shocked to see Moika Kiryu. Memories of the Alpha World line, where Moka killed Mayuri, flood back. Moka politely asks if she can come in. Moka appears, and Daru is apparently familiar with her due to third-party interviews in which Daru was asked about Akiba urban legends. Daru apparently has called her here in order to help aid in the search for Mayuri Shiina, and Okabe thinks multiple times about whether or not it is really a good idea to ask her to help, even considering the possibility that she is still a rounder in this world line. Despite his misgivings, he agrees to have her help, and curiously, her walking after departing the lab is animated with a sharp, dark gradient shadowing her face. Suzuha then asks Okabe if he knows Moka already, since it is obvious from his demeanor, but does not pry further when Okabe remains reticent. At the Brain Science Institute, Maho is shown to be quite worried about Okabe after hearing that he has not conversed with Amadeus since she had bluntly reminded him that Kurisu is already dead. She decides to go to Akihabara to visit Okabe and is inquired teasingly by Leskinen regarding what her intentions are. Maho stubbornly attempts to maintain that she is going there for a change of pace and that she might as well go visit Okabe while she's there. Back at the lab, Moka has apparently compiled her report, the primary observations of which were that it would not be easy to find Mayuri Shiina, and second, that other people had been searching for her for the past few months, some of them foreigners. From this information, Okabe conjectures that she must still be alive. In the next scene, Maho is shown to be in front of Akihabara Station, where she begins to compose a message asking if she can visit the lab. However, she is interrupted by a sinking feeling that a certain man is following her in a suit and immediately begins to walk. After seemingly being unable to shake off the person tailing her, she sprints and runs into an alleyway, where a person with a long winter jacket follows her. Seeing that she is visibly being followed, Maho once again begins sprinting, and the pursuing woman quickens her pace. Maho calls Okabe and tells him that she is near the lab before being cut off by the sound of a shocked whimper. Okabe, suspecting a possible attack similar to that on Mayuri from the previous world line, proceeds to immediately grab the lightsaber gadget and look for Maho. He comes across Maho's dropped belongings and subsequently finds Maho in the grip of the woman from before. It is then revealed that the woman is Judy Reyes, a colleague of Maho's and Leskinen. Apparently, Reyes merely saw Maho run into the alleyway and thought to surprise her, which leads to Maho wondering if she was imagining the person who followed her. Later, Maho tells Okabe that he has no reason to continue talking with Kurisu, questioning why he is not picking up her calls. Okabe then tells Maho to give him some time, assuring that he will sort this out on his own. Later at the lab, Mayuri heads outside as it begins snowing, telling Okabe that Ruka wants to talk to him. Shortly after, Okabe tries to get in contact with Ruka but is unable to do so. Suddenly, Ruka enters the lab, telling Okabe that he has brought someone along that he wants Okabe to meet. Upon seeing this person, Okabe stands in shock as the girl resembles a lot in Kurisu. After a while, Ruka explains that this is the guest he told Okabe about. Ruka further explains to Okabe that Kana has no memories from her past, as she has amnesia and doesn't even know her real name. Therefore, he asks for Okabe's help. Kana then hands over an upa that she has been keeping close to her for a very long time to help Okabe find out more about her. Thereafter, Mayuri arrives, followed by Suzuha. The latter immediately recognizes Kana as Mayuri Shiina. Kana's sudden wake-up shocked everyone, especially Rintarou. Her recovery made her earlier collapse feel pointless. His mind raced with doubts. Kagari's presence was unsettling, and Suzuha wasn't buying it either. For all they knew, Kagari could be a dangerous spy hiding behind a harmless face, ready to shatter their fragile lives. Suzuha had the tricky job of explaining all this to Mayuri and Rukako, two normal, clueless people who had no idea about time travel. Mayuri stayed sweet and cheerful, her kindness almost too perfect to be true. Rintarou appreciated it, but he couldn't help craving someone with a bit more depth, especially now. On top of that, he decided to trust Moeka, something that made no sense. He asked her to look into the group hunting Kagari, but was it smart to tell someone he didn't trust much? Maho was fed up with her colleagues, who wouldn't stop teasing her about her feelings for Rintarou. She was a brilliant scientist, but to them, her love life was the only thing that mattered. Meanwhile, Rintarou's instructions to Rukako on protecting Kagari were annoyingly vague, making Rukako even more nervous and unprepared for the job. The group tried to act normal, but their visit to the New Year's shrine was filled with tension. Kagari's sudden appearance felt too strange for Suzuha, and she stayed on edge, knowing shady forces were still lurking. Rintarou's past failures hit him at random moments, dragging him down. Maho's confusion about Rukako's gender only added to the weird vibe of the day. Things took a darker turn when Maho introduced Amadeus to the group. The AI suddenly shut down in the middle of their chat, its server unreachable. The mood shifted as creepy music played, and Mayuri's watch stopped. Rintarou's anxiety spiked. Before they could react, masked intruders burst in, guns raised. The armed men make a move to grab Kagari, but their attempt is quickly thwarted when Yugo Tenuji storms in like a one-man army, disarming them with brutal precision. Realizing these guys weren't the same rounders he'd tangled with before, Rintarou strides up to Tenuji, playing his trump card, his knowledge that Tenuji is tied to a secret rounder group linked to CERN. Rintarou, desperate, pitches the idea of working together to protect Kagari, hoping this uneasy alliance might give them the upper hand. Meanwhile, Maho's frustration grows as she remains locked out of Amadeus, feeling the walls closing in. Luca, feeling left in the dark, presses Suzuha for answers, eager to know what's being hidden from him. The tension is palpable. Everyone's secrets are beginning to pile up. Then, just when things couldn't get crazier, Rintarou receives a sudden, panicked distress call from Amadeus. His heart races as his reading Steiner kicks in, and before he knows it, he's ripped out of his world and thrown into an alternate reality, a world where Kurisu is still alive. The shift is jarring, leaving him breathless as he realizes the full weight of the situation. He's in a completely different world line, and nothing will ever be the same again. Okabe is crushed by grief, mourning the loss of Mayuri. He's drowning in sorrow when Kurisu walks into the lab, and in his clouded mind, he mistakes her for Mayuri. Without thinking, he pulls her into a tight hug, sobbing uncontrollably, calling out for Mayuri as if she's still there. Kurisu stands there, frozen, unsure of what to do. She gently tries to console him, urging him to move on from Mayuri. She tells him he can't keep living in the past, but Okabe isn't ready to hear it. His heart is torn, flooded with guilt over the choice he made to save Kurisu, which led directly to Mayuri's death. He feels lost, caught between guilt and an unending sadness. As he struggles to make sense of his thoughts, the reality hits him hard. This is an alpha world line, a world where Mayuri will die no matter what he does. There's no escape, no changing her fate. He turns to Kurisu, asking about the phone microwave, hoping for some answer. Kurisu quietly informs him that it was him who destroyed it when he had a mental breakdown. Kurisu watches him with suspicion as he suddenly stands up, announcing he needs to clear his mind. As he stands in the lab, he notices he's sitting on the spot where Mayuri always used to sit. It hits him hard. He's never dared to take her spot on the couch before. Now it's just empty space, a reminder of his loss. He leaves the lab and heads to a nearby park, lost in thought. Staring at his phone, he realizes the bitter truth. This timeline won't let Mayuri live. No matter what he does, she's gone. He wonders how he even ended up in this timeline in the first place. Suddenly, he hears a familiar voice, Daru calling his name. Daru approaches with that old friendly grin, inviting Okabe to their usual cafe. Daru sees how bad Okabe is feeling and drags him to their usual cafe, the one where Mayuri used to help out. When the girls notice Okabe, they're shocked, but Rumiho runs straight up and hugs him, greeting him warmly. Okabe takes a seat with them, but as they talk, the memories of Mayuri hit hard. The once lively cafe feels heavy and sad again, the atmosphere thick with loss. Out of nowhere, Okabe blurts out that it would be great if there was a world line where Mayuri was still alive. Daru's face darkens, and before Okabe can say more, he's yanked outside and pinned harshly to the wall. Daru's voice is cold and firm as he tells Okabe that Mayuri died because he couldn't make the hard choice. He couldn't press the key. In that moment, everything clicks for Okabe. The weight of the situation finally crashes down on him. After a long, silent walk home, Daru fills Kurisu in on what happened, and she quickly realizes that the Okabe standing in front of them is from a different world line. Without missing a beat, Kurisu starts fixing the phone microwave, determined to help him. She eventually presents it to Okabe, offering him a chance to send a message back to his original world line, a chance to fix everything. Okabe's mind races as he stares at the device. He's shocked by how quickly Kurisu figured him out, but when he thinks about it, he refuses. Sending the message would mean saving Mayuri and condemning Kurisu. The thought churns his stomach. He can't make that choice. Kurisu understands the torment in his eyes. The next day, she invites him out, guiding him to Shiina's grave. She tells him he needs to make a decision. He can't keep carrying this guilt or it'll crush him. Okabe stares at the grave, emotions swelling inside him, and then the tears come. Just as he starts to break down, a bright light shines down from the sky, directly illuminating Shiina's grave. In that moment, Okabe understands this is a sign from Mayuri. With a heavy heart, he agrees to go to the lab with Kurisu. Back in the lab, the guilt surges again, threatening to pull him back. He almost refuses, almost doesn't press the button. But then, Kurisu leans in and kisses him, her lips soft yet firm, and with that kiss, she presses the send button for him. Everything starts to shift. The world begins to blur, and Okabe feels himself slipping back to the world he came from. Kurisu watches him, a soft smile on her face. She knows that no matter what happens, she's accepted her fate. But in this moment, she's happy to see Okabe go back to the world he's always wanted, where Mayuri can live and where his guilt might finally let him breathe again. Okabe wakes up and realizes he's back in his original world line. He rushes out of the room, his heart racing, and finds himself in a hospital hallway. As he looks around, he sees his friends and Mayuri walking toward him. The truth hits him like a punch. Everything that happened in the Alpha world feels like a dream, a haunting one at that. His friends ask what happened when he suddenly fainted, but Okabe is lost in confusion. Still dazed from the memories of the past, he turns to Mayuri and asks if she remembers Kurisu. To his surprise, Mayuri responds that Kurisu is just the name of his AI system. The words hit Okabe hard, and disappointment washes over him. Later, they visit Fubuki-chan, who had fainted at the same time as Okabe. Fubuki reveals that she also had a dream where Mayuri died, and their world line continued in that painful loop. Okabe realizes that Fubuki too has memories of the Alpha world, and a wave of worry crashes over him. He fears that his actions have disturbed the world lines. Meanwhile, in Russia, the earthquakes keep shaking the ground. Suzuha, growing suspicious of the changes in the world line, picks up on a familiar name her father mentions. In an instant, everything clicks, and she understands what's going on. Okabe, too, feels the weight of the changes in the timeline. He resolves to protect Mayuri and the current Beta World line with everything he has. He moves them to a safe hotel, but soon gets a message from Suzuha demanding to meet. When Okabe arrives, Suzuha wastes no time. She asks if there has been a shift in the world line and whether this one is the right one. Okabe hesitates, unsure of how to answer, but before he can say anything, Suzuha points a gun at him. Her gaze is cold, and her voice demands the truth. Caught off guard, Okabe finally opens up, telling her everything about the Alpha World line and the temporary shift he's experienced. Suzuha listens carefully and then reveals the real cause of the earthquakes. They aren't the result of nuclear activity, as Okabe feared. Instead, they're a sign of the fierce competition between America and Russia to create a time machine, a race that could ultimately lead them into World War III. Okabe feels a cold wave of fear as the realization hits him. The key to controlling the time machine lies with Kurisu. His mind races with the implications, knowing that if America gets to her first, everything could spiral out of control. Suzuha, furious at Okabe's involvement, is determined to take him out. But before she can act, her father intervenes, stopping her in her tracks. Suzuha, overwhelmed with emotion, breaks down in tears, pleading for her father's help. The tension fills the air, but in that moment, her father offers her a comforting embrace, urging her to find another way. Meanwhile, Okabe digs deeper into his investigation, uncovering the truth behind Russia's ambitions to create a time machine. As the pieces of the puzzle start to fit together, Okabe's fear intensifies. He realizes that if America connects the dots first, Kurisu will be in their hands, and with her, the power to control time. On a ship, Suzuha and her father prepare for the next mission. As they work, Suzuha confides in her father about the ship's failing battery, admitting how difficult it will be to replace. Her father encourages her to write an apology letter to Okabe, and though reluctant, Suzuha agrees. They spend the rest of the evening together, sharing a rare moment of peace. The next day, Okabe visits Maho's room, only to find it in complete chaos. Papers are scattered everywhere, and books are piled up in disarray. He asks her what happened, and Maho explains that she's been buried in her research, trying to find answers. But as she speaks, Okabe's disappointment grows. There's no solid data to explain the sudden attacks. Feeling defeated, he leaves her room. However, as soon as Okabe is gone, Maho opens her laptop, revealing the name Kei Makise on the screen. The truth is clear. Maho has been hiding something from him. Maho opens her laptop, logging in as Salieri, and memories of her time with Kurisu flood her mind. She recalls their conversation about Mozart and the painful day Kurisu passed away. With a sigh, she carefully stores Kurisu's notebook in a locker and heads back to her lab. The professor is waiting for her and asks her to start up the AI system. Maho activates it, and suddenly, Kurisu's figure appears on the screen. The two women begin to argue, and the professor watches, amused by their bickering. In a playful twist, Kurisu teases Maho, realizing that she might have feelings for Okabe. Later, Okabe visits the hotel room where Maho and Kiryu are staying and is shocked to find the place completely trashed. Mayuri stands there, puzzled, wondering how it got so messy. Just then, Naesan enters and immediately takes charge, ordering everyone to clean up. Maho and Okabe step outside, discussing who could be responsible for the chaos in her room. Maho is taken aback when she learns that Kurisu had been researching a time machine. After returning to the room, they find everything neatly tidied up, but Maho feels uneasy, disliking how perfect the room now looks. Mayuri and Daru return, with a sleepy Naesan on their backs. Rumiho and Kiryu follow shortly after, bags in hand. Okabe, curious, asks what they're for, but Rumiho dismisses him, claiming it's just for their sleepover. That night, Maho, Kiryu, and Rumiho enjoy their sleepover, laughing and chatting as they drift off to sleep. The next day, Okabe takes Maho to a digital parts shop, and she excitedly examines every gadget, her eyes lighting up at each new discovery. After some wandering, they end up at the place where Kurisu had died. Maho, quiet and somber, tells Okabe she wants to visit the room one last time. Reluctantly, Okabe leads her there, but as they stand outside, memories of his time with Kurisu overwhelm him, and he bolts, running away from the painful memories. Still trying to calm his racing heart, Maho quietly asks him how he knew Kurisu so well, despite not having spent much time together. Okabe hesitates, memories of the Alpha World line clouding his thoughts. He doesn't know if he can reveal the truth, but Maho, summoning all her courage, confesses something important. She tells Okabe that she still has Kurisu's laptop, the one with all of her research data. Okabe, startled by the revelation, grabs Maho's arms, shaking her urgently. He demands to know everything. The data in that laptop is the key to a possible world war, the one thing that both America and Russia desperately want, and if it falls into the wrong hands, it could ignite World War III. Maho's face pales with fear, realizing the gravity of the situation. The weight of Okabe's words sinks in, and she finally understands just how dangerous the data really is. Maho takes Okabe with her to the location where she was keeping Kurisu's laptop, and they enter a store. Maho leads them to a clothes section and gets the message on her phone to enter the passage near the maid's costume. They enter the passage and find a door. They enter the room and find Daru. Okabe is shocked by his friend there and asks what he was doing there. Daru explains that Maho gave him the task to hack into Kurisu's laptop. Okabe watches Daru, who is continuously deciphering Kurisu's laptop data, and asks Daru to stop the process immediately. Maho disagrees with him and tells him that she wants to continue the legacy of Kurisu. Okabe warns her to not dwell further on the data, as that could lead to a drastic war. Okabe mentions the time machine and quickly stops himself before he reveals the truth to Maho. He asks her to leave the room and asks Daru to stop the process. Daru advises him to tell Maho the truth, and Okabe feels reluctant to do it. In the end, Okabe agrees and tells Maho the truth about Kurisu's data and warns her not to further get involved with the time machine and its processes. Okabe knew that after Maho got to know about the time machine, she would try her best to save Kurisu, but Okabe didn't want that to happen. He tells Maho that no matter what she does, she will not be able to save Kurisu, and if she tries to do so, she will destroy a complete world line. Maho feels terrible knowing that she can't save her old friend even with all of her efforts combined, but agrees with Okabe. Okabe enters the room and decides to destroy Kurisu's laptop and asks Maho to give the permission to do so, but she refuses to let go of Kurisu's legacy. Okabe makes his reasoning and convinces Maho to agree with him. Finally, when Maho understands that the laptop is the key to worldly destruction, she agrees to let the laptop be destroyed for good. Before they can destroy the laptop, they get ambushed by the enemy, and they flee the hideout. Unluckily, they get surrounded by the enemy, and Maho is taken as a hostage. Okabe makes a deal with the attackers and lets them take the laptop for the sake of their own lives. The attackers let them go, but before they could escape, they were attacked by another group of attackers who arrived there in a van and fired bullets at them. The laptop gets destroyed, but luckily Maho, Daru, and Okabe are safe in the attack. They come back to their room all relieved that they were able to avoid a war from happening. Maho, who is still in shock, feels lost after losing the legacy of Kurisu. She faints after taking a bath since her body, which was in continuous stress, got relaxed in the bath. She rests in the end with Okabe sitting beside her and consoling her. She explains that she felt obsessed with Kurisu's laptop and was just curious about what was inside the laptop, and now that it was gone, she feels relieved. The next day, Maho and her professor leave for America, and finally, Okabe bids his goodbye to Kurisu. The professor invites him to come to his university so they can research on something together, and Mayuri readily agrees to go if Okabe goes. Okabe makes the assumption that the Americans were behind the attack on them, and the Russians were the ones who used guns to destroy the laptop. Okabe feels relieved that finally the terrible days were over, and now everyone went back to their normal routine. He feels relieved knowing their actions were able to bring peace to the world. In one of Kagari's childhood memories, she wakes up in a bed to see a figure she believes is her mommy watching over her. Her mom smiles and tells her that her treatment is complete and she's now officially Kagari's mom. Her mom then takes her out for a walk, humming a song as they go. Curious, Kagari asks about the song, and her mom explains that it was taught to her by someone very special, and she wants Kagari to learn it too. The song is something she hopes Kagari will sing when she finds someone dear to her. Together, they sing the song and continue walking, the memory filled with warmth. Back in the present, Kagari is hanging out with Daru and Mayuri when Mayuri offers her some food she's made. As Mayuri hums the same song Kagari's mom used to sing, Kagari freezes. She walks up to Mayuri, confused, saying that she recognizes the song but can't remember where from. The flood of forgotten memories overwhelms her, and she faints right into Mayuri's arms. Okabe rushes over to the house, asking Mayuri about Kagari's condition. She fills him in on what happened, and soon he meets up with Suzuha, who shares a troubling story. Suzuha recalls an incident when Kagari, only 10 years old, had pointed a gun at her, threatening that if Suzuha changed the world, she might never be able to see her mommy again. Suzuha explains that Kagari's life changed drastically when she met Mayuri, which is why Mayuri has become like a mother to her. Kagari wakes up on the couch, still disoriented, but she remembers something important: the song. She believes it could be the key to unlocking her lost memories. They head to their usual cafe, where Mayuri reveals that Suzuha often hums the song while gazing out of the window. Kagari insists that she needs to discover the source of the song, believing it might unlock her forgotten memories. Okabe wonders if the song might be some kind of future hit, but decides to take action and call Suzuha to ask her about it. Suzuha, having just won an eating competition, tells him she learned it from someone named Yuki-san. Determined to find answers, they track down Yuki-san, who's on a date with Daru. After a quick chat, they ask her about the song. Yuki-san explains that she learned it from someone who used to take classes with her. In a last-ditch effort, Okabe calls this person, and to his surprise, it turns out to be his own mother. Hearing his mother's voice on the phone, Okabe is stunned. When he asks her about the song, his mother drops a bombshell. Okabe himself used to sing it to Mayuri. The circle of confusion deepens. His mother explains that he sang it all the time when they were younger, leaving Okabe baffled and more curious than ever. With the mystery only growing, Okabe, Mayuri, and Kagari decide to visit Mayuri's grandmother's grave. As Mayuri talks to her grandma about Kagari, the sky suddenly darkens and rain begins to pour. They rush to find shelter, but in the midst of it, Mayuri notices Kagari shivering. Before she can react, Kagari faints again. This time, in her unconscious state, Kagari finds herself chasing after her mommy figure. When she catches up, she's shocked to see Mayuri as her mom. Kagari wakes up in the hospital and, overwhelmed with emotion, rushes to hug Mayuri, shouting that she's missed her so much. Mayuri hesitates at first, unsure how to react, but then pulls Kagari into a comforting embrace, finally accepting the role of her mother figure. Everyone watches helplessly as Kagari clings to Mayuri and calls her mommy over and over. Daru praises Mayuri for perfectly handling the situation, while Okabe tells him that Mayuri simply accepted Kagari's pleas for her to be Kagari's mother. Suzuha, who couldn't bear watching it anymore, leaves the place and goes back to her work. Mayuri gifts Kagari a matching phone case that she joyfully shows off to everyone. For some reason, Daru and Okabe find Kagari's distorted memories weird and want to investigate them. Kagari then goes to her job and finds an annoyed Suzuha there. She asks her why she has started hating her, but Suzuha simply scolds her, and they get into an argument, leading them both to get in a sour mood. Mayuri decides to throw a party for Kagari's memories to be restored and tells Okabe about it. She invites all their friends and tells Kagari to get back home on time. Kagari quickly guesses that Mayuri is throwing a party for her, but goes with the flow to make Mayuri happy. Okabe is constantly investigating what could have led to Kagari getting only her childhood memories back, and gets the suspicion that someone is deliberately trying to suppress her memories for some reason. He asks Kiryu about the matter, and she shows him the location where Kagari was first found and suspects that there might be something there that can lead them to finding out about Kagari's memories. Suzuha talks to her father about the problem with Kagari. She tells him that it would have been so nice if she was able to enjoy her time like Kagari. She lets her frustration out in front of her father and expresses that she wants to spend her time relaxed here and wants to be spoiled by everyone else. Her father then consoles her and tells her that he can spoil her as much as she wants, and Suzuha feels relieved hearing her father's words and reflects on her actions. Everyone waits at the party, and even Suzuha, who realizes her mistake, shows up for the party with Mayuri's invitation. They all then wait for Okabe and Kagari to show up at the party. Okabe and Kiryu find the location that has clues about Kagari's memories. Kiryu explains to Okabe that this place has been in use recently, not less than a year ago. He looks at the traces of the building and also senses something dark in there. Kiryu suggests they look deeper into the building to figure out what was the real secret behind the distortion in Kagari's memories. They dwell further and find a disturbing room filled with Kagari's drawings, which look like a crazy obsessed person had drawn all over the room. The room was filled with the same word, mommy, written and drawn all over. Okabe quickly gets that something was gravely wrong there, and this place was not just a treatment center. On the other hand, Kagari, who was walking back home happily to meet Mayuri, suddenly gets the memories of her past and feels like someone is calling for her. She looks at the sky, and the cake in her hand falls down. She then starts walking towards a different direction, saying that the voice of God is calling for her. Mayuri calls Okabe and tells her that Kagari has gone missing, and he quickly runs out of the building to find her. Months fly by, and still no sign of Kagari. Daru and Suzuha are getting desperate, so they try to get Maho's help to build the time leap machine. Meanwhile, Fubuki gets dragged back to the hospital, and Rintarou runs into Leskinen. Of course, they cross paths again. Back at the lab, Suzuha finds Kagari's UPA toy just lying on the floor. Just then, she gets attacked by Kagari, who's been brainwashed into some freaked-out version of herself. She wasn't just brainwashed, though. Suzuha realizes Kagari was messed up before even making that jump to the past. Suzuha and Daru are frustrated, so they contact Maho again. She's reluctant at first, but then Amadeus Kurisu's spirit gives her a nudge, reminding her to go back to Japan. With her motivation rebooted, she finally agrees to help them out with the time machine. Maho lands back in Japan, and it's straight into the chaos. Suzuha, totally freaked out that her future birth might not happen, drags everyone into this mission to boost Daru's confidence so he can confess to Yuki. In the meantime, Maho, tech-savvy, uses a gadget that turns Daru into a ladies' man, just in time for his big date with Yuki. However, everything falls apart the moment Daru gets manly. Yuki runs away, leaving Daru feeling dejected. That's when Suzuha drops the bombshell. There is no someone else waiting for Yuki in the future. She just wanted to remind herself of the peace she had before Yuki got taken out. It's a mess, but it's real. And that honesty hits Daru like a ton of bricks. With Suzuha's tough love, Daru decides to ditch the act and just be his goofy, awkward self the next time he sees Yuki. He then confesses his feelings for her, and they become a couple. Watching them from the sidelines, Suzuha feels this little spark of self-confidence. And there, in the background, Kagari's observing it all, silently taking notes. Meanwhile, Rintarou is still working hard to qualify for overseas studies, but it's got Mayuri worried about him. Meanwhile, Daru and Maho are grinding away on the time leap machine, but it's going nowhere fast. Just as they're about to give up, Rintarou angrily barges in. He's yelling about how saving both Mayuri and Kurisu is a pipe dream and how he had to pick Mayuri, locking them into the beta world line. Dude's barely holding it together. But Maho, hopeful, says SteinsGate is out there somewhere. They just need to figure out the formula to get there. It's a full-on standoff. Rintarou storms out, done with the debate, and bumps into Mayuri outside. Turns out, Mayuri heard the whole thing. And she's not mad, she's sad. She spills her guts, telling Rintarou she regrets stopping him from trying to save Kurisu. She knows he's still drowning in guilt, pretending to be fine, but deep down, he's miserable. Her words hit him like a truck, leaving him to wrestle with the weight of his choices all over again. Mayuri, tired of being kept in the dark, corners Suzuha and begs her to give her the information on the future and everything Rintarou's been through. Suzuha, knowing that the time is drawing near, lays it all out: the grim future, her mission, and the fact she's planning to bounce back to the past that very day. Hearing this, Mayuri makes a bold move. She decides she will join her. She's determined to see the old Kyomahuin again, even if it means putting her feelings for Rintarou aside. Her plan is to convince past Rintarou to save Kurisu. Meanwhile, Rintarou gets blindsided by Maho, who tells him someone hacked the Amadeus system and is digging into Kurisu's notes on time machines. Panicking, he runs to stop Suzuha and Mayuri, but they're already gearing up to leave. As Suzuha preps the time machine, her gadget beeps with a D-mail from Daru. 2025 Daru. The message is that their actions already flipped the world line, and it's time to kick off Operation Arclight. But before Suzuha can even process it, chaos erupts. Armed soldiers show up, guns blazing, ready to snatch the time machine. Suzuha fends of the soldiers to buy Mayuri time to escape. But then, the unthinkable happens. Mayuri gets caught in the crossfire and takes a bullet. Suzuha screams, caught between rage and despair, as their mission starts crumbling around them. Furious after seeing Mayuri hurt, Kagari snaps, tearing through the soldiers like a woman possessed. She takes heavy hits, but she's not going down without a fight. Meanwhile, Rintarou is blindsided by Leskinen, who drops the ultimate bombshell. He's part of Stratfor, and he's been playing puppet master this whole time. He admits he got future intel straight from Kagari's brainwashed self, which his older self used to orchestrate everything: her journey to the past, the creation of Amadeus, and the preservation of Kurisu's time travel theories. Leskinen isn't just bragging either. He's got Maho and Daru at gunpoint, ready to take the time machine for himself. Just as things look hopeless, Kagari, battered and bleeding, uses her last ounce of strength to take down the remaining soldiers and sucker punch Leskinen into next week. With that opening, Suzuha makes a mad dash to get Mayuri into the time machine. Before they can escape, a Derpa helicopter shows up, missiles blazing. The time machine takes a direct hit, exploding in a fiery wreck. Suzuha and Mayuri vanish in the chaos, their fate a big question mark. Rintarou collapses, broken and drowning in guilt. Amid the wreckage, his phone buzzes with a final message from Mayuri. In it, she pours her heart out, explaining why she was willing to risk everything to change the past and why she believes he has the strength to do what's right. With the time machine destroyed and World War III about to start, Rintarou works with Maho and Daru to finish the time leap machine. Thanks to a boost of confidence from Amadeus Kurisu, Maho completes the machine, and Rintarou jumps back in time to before everything went wrong. He quickly tells Maho and Daru to hack Leskinen's computer and grab the Amadeus data. Then, he rushes to warn Mayuri and Suzuha about the danger and learns about their plan to convince his past self to aim for SteinsGate again. Just as he tells them to leave, a soldier attacks Rintarou, and it turns out to be Prof. Reyes. Before she can do more damage, Leskinen shows up and shoots her, but things spiral out of control again. The time machine gets destroyed, leaving Rintarou no choice but to keep time leaping to save Mayuri and Suzuha. Rintarou wakes up and realizes he's somehow in 2036. Akihabara is a wreck, torn apart by World War III, and Daru, Suzuha, and the crew are leading a resistance. Daru explains what went down. They used the recovered time leap machine to send Rintarou's 2011 memories into his future body. Daru breaks the bad news. Back in 2011, the time leap machine glitched and they missed the 48-hour window to save Mayuri. They had no choice but to start building a new time machine. By 2025, Rintarou was captured and tortured by Stratfor, leaving him brain dead but alive when Daru finally saved him. For 11 years, the resistance kept Rintarou's condition a secret, hoping for a miracle. Before Rintarou can process it all, Luca and Ferris get caught in an enemy trap. Luca heroically sacrifices himself to save the others, dying in Rintarou's arms. The weight of everything hits Rintarou hard. He can't avoid the truth any longer. Determined to fix the timeline and reach the SteinsGate world line, Rintarou asks to use the time leap machine one last time to go back to 2011 and make things right. With Amadeus Kurisu's guidance, Rintarou starts a brutal grind of back-to-back time leaps, clawing his way toward 2011. When he reaches 2025, the day he's supposed to get captured, Amadeus and the gang step up. They help him dodge the Stratfor goons and make it to Akihabara, where he finally completes his leap to the past. Back in 2011, Rintarou dusts off his mad scientist alter ego, Kyomahuin, ready to turn the tables. He gets Daru working on recovering Amadeus' data and teams up with Tenuji to take down a brainwashed Kagari. With their help, Rintaro and Moika manage to intercept Leskinen's schemes, giving Mayuri and Suzuha the chance to board the time machine. But just as things start looking up, disaster strikes. The attack helicopters show up earlier than expected, firing a missile right as the time machine activates. After countless failed attempts to save Mayuri and Suzuha, Rintaro figures out the real problem. He needs to stop the Russians from messing with the time machine. Turns out, their secret weapon is Kurisu's memory data. That's when Amadeus Kurisu steps in with a bold plan. Use Daru's D-Rhine app to send a D-mail to the past, telling his younger self to delete her program. Rintaro's not ready to let her go, but Amadeus spends the night convincing him. She tells him it's worth it if it means finding SteinsGate and stopping World War III. Her words hit hard, but her determination pushes Rintaro to finally agree. In a bittersweet moment, Amadeus Kurisu says goodbye to everyone, her voice steady even as it breaks their hearts. With a deep breath, Rintaro sends the D-Rhine. In an instant, Amadeus is gone, and Rintaro shifts into a new world line, one step closer to saving everyone. Landing in a world line where Amadeus is wiped from existence, Rintaro wastes no time heading to the rooftop. With Moika's help, he slips past Leskinen and makes it just in time to push Mayuri and Suzuha toward their mission. Meanwhile, Kagari, finally trusting Rintaro, throws herself into the fight, holding back the enemy just long enough for the time machine to take off before the chopper unleashes hell. Once Mayuri and Suzuha arrive in the past, they hatch a bold plan. Mayuri calls her past self, dropping a heartfelt pep talk and asking her to steer Rintaro back on track. Then, to dodge a time paradox, Mayuri and Suzuha are forced to jump blindly into another era. Back in the past, Mayuri delivers a well-placed slap to Rintaro, jolting him out of his funk just as he receives a D-mail from his future self. In 2025, Rintaro records a video for his younger self, laying out the steps to save both Mayuri and Kurisu and finally reach SteinsGate. But Rintaro isn't done yet. Climbing into a time machine, he sets off to find Mayuri and Suzuha. He tracks them all the way back to 18,000 BC, a barren wasteland where they've been stranded. As Mayuri and Suzuha brace themselves for the worst, Rintaro swoops in, time machine roaring, ready to bring them home.